Good evening to everyone, to the whole DepEd community, to our partners from the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, particularly to the Regional English Language Office in American Spaces, to our three American English language specialists, to our English language teacher participants who are joining us here via Zoom, and to our Facebook Live audience. Welcome to another live, informative, and comprehensive webinar session of Bridging the Distance Together, Virtual and Offline English Language Instruction in the Philippines. This is a collaborative project of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines and the Department of Education, specifically the Bureau of Learning Delivery, Teaching and Learning Division, and the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. We are live right now on Facebook pages of DepEd Philippines, Regional English Language Office Manila, and American Spaces Philippines. Last week, we learned about practical strategies for digital English content and learning principles, where our English language specialists provided us with invaluable content knowledge on practical issues of digital teaching and learning. Digital safety and privacy protection was also provided by our English language specialists, and resources that are available in the Philippines. Also, our English language specialists shared to us some online teaching and learning spaces and what tools to use, K-12 assessments and rubrics. Free online resources were also provided during the webinar session. Tonight's webinar is the last session in the 6-week webinar series of the Bridging the Distance Together, Virtual and Offline English Language Instruction in the Philippines. In this practical session, we will explore ways to increase engagement and motivation in learners. During our time together with the English language specialists, we will learn the practical strategies for increasing family engagement, encouraging learning outside of lessons, and maintaining interest and engagement among learners. This webinar session will be facilitated by Andrea Ackelberger. Let us get to know her again. Andrea Ackelberger is an ESL training coordinator at the Minnesota Literacy Council, where she conducts professional development trainings and develops resources for teachers of all levels and backgrounds. Before becoming a professional trainer, Andrea spent 10 years working with refugees and immigrants from around the world. As much as she loves teacher training, the classroom will always be her home. Andrea spent 2 years as an English language fellow in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and is currently serving on the board of LESLA, where she has the opportunity to spend lots of time talking about her favorite topics, literacy level instruction, and pronunciation. Joining her as co-facilitators for this webinar session will be Dr. Crystal Brody and Mr. Aaron Royer. Without further ado, fellow educators, let us give them a virtual round of applause. All right, Andrea?
All right, thank you so much, Sarden. I'll go ahead and share my screen and get us started with our final webinar. All right, I am very, very excited to be here with you. I had the opportunity to lead the first webinar, and now I will be leading our final webinar. So thank you so much. I know everybody has extremely busy schedules. You're in your third week of teaching, and I know how much that takes out of you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening so that we can learn and talk about this topic together. So tonight we are going to be talking about keeping students engaged and motivated during remote teaching. So during the past 5 webinars, we've looked at a variety of different modalities for teaching students, using paper-based, radio, TV, and then a lot of information about how we can do digital instruction using learning management systems. So today, our last topic is going to be tying all of those together. Motivation and engagement is going to be important no matter which method you are learning to deliver instruction to. So what I talk about tonight is going to apply to all of the different areas, not just one or the other. And I will definitely be providing examples for how to do things the low tech for colleagues in Philippines who have less access to technology or whose students may have very limited technology. But like I said, what we're going to be talking about tonight is going to cover you no matter which of the learning modalities you are able to use to serve your students. So just a quick review of what we'll be talking about during the hour that we have together. We will be doing a review of engagement strategies. So what have we talked about so far from the first 5 webinars that you can use when you are thinking about engagement? We'll look particularly at family engagement. Families are going to be incredibly important and incredibly valuable when it comes to doing virtual instruction and remote instruction. So how can we get families engaged, and what can we tell them that will help them make it more successful for their children? We're going to spend a little time talking about learning outside of school lessons, and then we'll wrap up by looking at ways we can maintain learner interest and motivation. So just a very quick review. I know we have been working with the Zoom platform for a while, so everybody's probably feeling pretty comfortable with it at this point. But just reminding everyone, use the Q&A if you have questions for myself, the other specialists. My 2 colleagues, Dr. Brody and Aaron, will be monitoring the chat or monitoring the Q&A, and they can be responding to questions as we go. Also, at the end, we're going to have about 20 minutes tonight for us 3, the specialist team, to answer questions. And then we are going to be handing it over to our DepEd partners who are going to be answering some of those logistics questions that have come up. And they've been monitoring, watching the Q&A and watching the chat and taking note of what logistics questions teachers have. So they'll spend some time after we do the Q&A, answering some of the specific questions that you have that they can address. Remember, you can like and upvote and comment on questions in the Q&A. And then the chat, I'll be asking several prompts throughout my session tonight, and Dr. Brody will be reading some of those aloud. So use the chat for informal conversation and those discussion prompts, and just double check to make sure that you are sending it to all panelists and attendees. We want to make sure that when we send it to all panelists and attendees, everybody's going to be able to see your response, and we want to make sure that everybody can learn from one another. All right, so let's get started with the first prompt. We're going to start by talking about challenges. So, what challenges do teachers face in keeping learners engaged and motivated during remote instruction? I'll give you a moment, share your thoughts in the chat box, and then Crystal, Dr. Brody will read some of those responses out loud.
We have short attention span, internet connectivity, lack of interest, sleepy students. Short attention comes up a lot, connectivity, no gadgets, students are not focused, they don't understand. Accessibility comes up a lot, no laptop. Effective giving feedback, volume of activities, remote areas, access again. Oh, this is interesting. Filipino students are naturally shy. That's an interesting point. Lack of interest again signals no parental guidance, work at home, household chores, low comprehension, lack of guidance, no focus. Again, no accessibility, no gadget,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so forth. So we pretty much have areas that child labor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. So it sounds like there's a lot of different challenges. I hear a lot about the issue of connectivity. It sounds like came up quite a bit, and access to the internet. Also sounded like students with short attention spans came up, parents not knowing how to support students. So thank you. All right, and thank you, Crystal. So absolutely, everything that was listed is a really, really big challenge. And hopefully some of the things that we'll be talking about today will give you some really concrete ideas for how you can help students overcome them, ways that you can get students interested and motivated, ways that you can do engaging instruction without the internet. So like I said, I will be sharing a lot of ideas and resources that can be used without the internet. And also ways that we can tap in and support and get the parents kind of on our side and helping us. So as we begin our review, the review of engagement strategies, what have we talked about so far? Because this is something that has come up in all of the different webinars we've mentioned. How do you keep students engaged depending on what you're using for a delivery method? So I wanted to remind people, I found this and read this quote that really jumped out at me when I was reading the roadmap for the Department of Education in the Philippines, roadmap to using those commons where you can find all of the different materials. And what that said was the localization and customization made by teachers and learners will significantly outweigh the benefits of simply downloading any learning materials on the internet. So I really wanted to highlight this. Again, reminding you is you are the teachers. You are going to be experts in your students. You know what it is that they need. You know what they are interested in. You know the best ways to reach them. So it is going to be, a lot of up to teachers to find your base materials and then be creative. Figure out how you can make these materials more engaging, how you can use them to motivate students. What interests of theirs are you going to tap in? And what are you going to do to make them more accessible and help students get more practice? So don't be afraid. You don't have to, when you're finding materials, the expectation is not that you will always use them exactly as is. Know that you have permission to make adaptations, to do expansions, do what is best and is going to work for your learners and where they are at. So I just wanted to quickly review some of those strategies, particularly starting with pedagogy. What have we been talking about with pedagogy? So remembering that there are 3 parts that really make up good pedagogy for remote instruction. And all of these 3 topics tie very closely into keeping students engaged. So when it comes to the first part, student-driven learning, being aware of the questions you're asking questions that are going to get students interested, get them to dive in and dig in. Encouraging learners to really explore the topics, not just reading a passage and answering questions, but really thinking about it, doing multiple readings, doing some text-dependent questions, and then thinking about how learners are going to be able to apply that to real life. Because when you can take something from your paper or take something from your screen and see how it plays out in real life, that's extremely motivating to learners. Another big part of motivation and engagement is that question of interactivity. And when we're talking interactivity, that can be interactivity between the student and the materials, interactivity between the student and the teacher, and then interactivity between students. So as instructors, it's going to be up to you to figure out how do you manage that and facilitate that and make it happen. What communication platform are you going to use that works the best for you and works the best for your students? How are you going to foster and facilitate those interactions? Is it going to be having students write letters back and forth, write in a journal, sending out text message questions throughout the day or throughout the week, answering prompts on Facebook, sharing things on Facebook? What works the best for the resources that you have? And then finally, that strong teacher presence. You know, the teacher is just a really, really big part of the learning experience for all of the students. So keeping in mind as you are moving forward with teaching online, how are you supporting students cognitively, you know, supporting their understanding of the materials? How do you make yourself available to answer questions and give feedback? How do you support students effectively, letting them know that you're interested in their health and their well-being, that you care, that you're checking in on them? And then what systems can be put in place that are going to support learners and help them to be able to succeed with remote instruction? Also wanted to highlight some of these module-based ideas that we've talked about over the first 5 webinars. You know, that idea of being really deliberate about what activities and what types of worksheets you're choosing, thinking about getting rid of the busy sheets and moving to power sheets that are really going to have the greatest impact. One of the topics that Erin talked about. Also thinking about ways that you can extend and modify activities using paper or radio or TV-based instructional models. How can you use those as springboards to have interesting writing activities that look at critical thinking skills, to be doing some fun expansion work, having students show what they're doing and show their work, and giving students a chance to maybe read some topics that are related, that they're of interest. And then also there were suggestions for making worksheets social and gamifying activities. And finally, for a review, I wanted to touch on assessment and feedback, because assessment and feedback are just a huge part of doing any type of remote instruction and really play an important role in keeping students engaged. And one thing I want to remind people is that this can be a wonderful opportunity to move away from always taking those tests where students sit down and they're, you know, answering 20 to 50 questions. We can give students a little space to be creative when it comes to assessments and how we're giving feedback. So thinking of using things like checklists and rubrics that will help students be able to monitor their own progress and become more independent learners. Things like doing portfolios and giving students opportunities to choose how they want to show what they've learned, using some creative means. And then Crystal talked quite a bit in the last session about, you know, project-based learning, and there's a lot of wonderful resources that she shared for teachers who are interested in doing more project-based learning. That can be a great way for students to get creative and really show what they know. All right, so wrapping up the review, I am going to bring us to family engagement, thinking about how do we get families involved. And knowing that parental involvement helps children learn more effectively. Teachers who are successful at involving parents in their children's schoolwork are successful because they work at it. So parents generally, they want their children to succeed, but they may not know how, and they may not know the best ways to get involved and the best ways to support their children. So it's really up to the teachers to make sure that they are bringing in the parents, that they're letting them know what will be helpful, and they're giving them clues to help support learning, because it's not going to happen naturally, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take deliberate work and reaching out to families in order to successfully have parents be involved. But as teachers, knowing that parents are really going to be the #1 ally for getting students to have a successful experience with remote instruction at home. So here are some things that we can tell parents that they can do, really concrete suggestions, how parents can support students. One is creating a consistent space for children to learn so that they sit down every day to do their schoolwork in the same spot. It doesn't have to be, you know, a desk set aside in a special room. It can be a corner of the table, of a kitchen table that's cleared, and that's where they sit down and do their work. Also, if there is not a lot of space, think about encouraging parents to get a box where their children put all of their learning materials or self-learning modules, everything that they need to complete their homework, and having, a concrete area where they can put everything away. They can tuck it under their bed at night, put it next to their bed, and then when they get up, they grab it and they go to their learning place and they have everything they need. Also very helpful, particularly, well, I say particularly for younger children, to have a daily routine for engaging in school too, but also helpful for middle schoolers and for teenagers as well. But parents can help by having a daily routine for engaging in school, and expecting children to follow it. And then beginning and ending the day by checking in. So asking questions like, what subjects do you have today? Do you have any assessments? Um, you know, how are you going to spend your time? What's your plan for today? What do you need? Is there anything I can do to help? And then at the end of the day, can ask questions like, how far did you get in your learning tasks today? What new things did you learn? What was hard? What can we do to make tomorrow better? So parents don't have to have all of the answers to be able to ask questions about their children about how they're learning. And that shows that they're plugged in, they're engaged, and they're following and tracking what students are doing. Also a good idea to make sure parents know how to stay in touch with schools and teachers and not be afraid to ask for help. So that's going to require clear messaging on behalf of the schools and the teachers. Also, sitting for a long time for children is really hard, even if they're not in front of a screen, doing paperwork. So parents can encourage students to get up, play, just run around the house, have a little 5-minute running break or a dance break, but encourage students to do some physical activity. And then also really important is going to be help children manage stress. Children aren't following their usual routines, they're not seeing their friends. Everything's kind of scary right now. Helping children to get good information, to manage stress, talk about how, parents are keeping their families safe is going to be really important. When children are stressed, it is a lot harder for them to learn. So clear communication is going to be a really big part of supporting parents. So whichever communication platform you use, whether that's, learning management system like Moodle or Edmodo, Google Classroom, using something like Facebook or text messages or sending paper notes back and forth, make sure that you pick something that works and that you use it consistently. And again, you might need to use more than one. And it's also really important that schools and teachers focus on building a two-way relationship. So all of the information shouldn't be coming from the teachers in schools and being sent out to the families. There should be options for parents to engage back, to ask questions, to share ideas, to talk about what's going wrong and what they have questions about. So really encourage that back and forth. Also provide regular access to teachers. And again, we said this before, this doesn't mean that teachers are going to be on 24/7. Please don't do that because your health is extremely important. But something you might want to think about doing is setting, a schedule with office hours of different times during the week when you're going to be available to talk to families, to talk to children, answer phone calls, and be on that two-way radio, and help students and help families out when they have questions. And think about being flexible with that. Maybe you have a couple evenings a week where you're available. Maybe you have a block of time on a weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday. Maybe you have some mornings, so that parents with different schedules will have opportunities to reach out to the teachers. Give suggestions for remote learning routines so that parents who haven't done this before have an idea of what it can look like for their children. And then think about really clearly communicating weekly school expectations. So this is what children are going to be working on this week. This is how many hours we expect them to do this. This is what they should have finished by the week. As whenever possible, though, really recommend doing that as a cohort. So a student might have 5 or 6 different teachers. Instead of having parents be bombarded with 5 or 6 different messages, make sure that you have clear lines of communication with other teachers so you can get together and send out one message for those students that tells them everything they'll be doing that week. Another thing that schools can do to help support parents is be deliberate about developing systems. So think about how you can develop ways that families can give feedback on successes and challenges, and then have a plan in place. Is there a group of teachers or a group of administrators that's going to collect that information, and then when they see patterns, make a plan for addressing those concerns? You can also provide tutorials and cheat sheets for parents, and this is something that we talked about quite a bit in the Q&A last time, I believe. But the idea that, the answer key comes with the self-learning modules, maybe you separate that, and when parents pick it up, they take charge of the answer keys. And so when the children are done, they can go over and check them together. And if you have other activities that you are asking students to do, maybe you are setting a cheat sheet for the parents so they can check work, or thinking about doing tutorials so that parents will see how to do these different types of activities and can provide better support for children. And then if it's something that's available, safety first, of course, but maybe you can do some distance learning parent training sessions at the school, where you have kind of a parent meeting, you get a chance to tell them what the school is going to look like, you show them what the self-learning modules or what the TV or radio is going to look like, or what the web platform that students will be interacting with, talk through the different expectations, give people a chance to answer questions. So that might be something you do at school, or maybe doing it in home visits. So I wanted to pause and turn it over to you and ask, how are you staying in contact with and supporting families during the pandemic? So just going to the chat, and so we'll give you a moment to respond, and then Crystal will read some of those responses out loud. So how are you staying in contact with families? What's been working for you so far?
So we're getting a lot of SMS, we get phone calls, we get messengers a lot, mostly messengers. Some do Facebook Messenger. We get phone calls quite often, group chats. Um, you know, Messenger comes up the most often, and phone calls.
Excellent, thank you. So it sounds like teachers and schools are doing what works best, and figuring out how to best reach families with where they're at. All right. So I wanted to also share some ways that schools and parents can work together to support students who are emergent readers, who are developing those literacy skills. This is something that has come up quite a bit in questions. Well, how do we support children who are learning to read? So some things that you can do to kind of get parents on your side and get parents working and thinking about this is send out, for example, text messages, or whichever platform, if that's a Google group or an app that you're using, but send out messages that send literacy tips and reminders to families about reading with children or different activities that they can engage in. So there was, in the US, there's a 2015 study that they found that using these types of text messages, and they just use SMS text messages, to sending those tips and reminders to family was a really powerful way to promote literacy development at home. So they found when they combined those messages to families with, some goal setting and some social rewards, and also we're sharing information with families about the importance of reading to children, it more than doubled the amount of time that low-income families spent reading to their children using an ebook app so that they could track how much time they were doing. So think about sending out weekly tips and reminders with some ideas for activities that parents can engage from. And so that might be some question prompts for dialogic reading, phonological activities with language from the week that parents can do with their children outside of the class time. So another thing that schools and parents can do is model reading activities. So if teachers are able to show parents how to do these helpful reading activities, then parents will be able to do them at home with their children. So things like retelling or dialogic reading, which I'll explain in the next slide a little bit more about that. Phonological and phonics awareness activities, doing partner reading where parents and children are reading together, asking and answering questions, and then things like identifying the main idea from a story. And I'm not sharing a ton of different resources because I know you have a lot, but there are, I think, 4 resources that I've highlighted throughout with a little star at the bottom. So when you see the PowerPoint, you can just go to the pages with a star and click on it. And there is a collection of articles for ways that parents can support their children and teens home learning that came out from the state of Iowa. If you would like to get some more ideas for things that you can share with parents. All right, so I wanted to highlight 2 of these. Dialogic reading questions. So dialogic reading questions, thinking about how when most adults read a book with a child, they read aloud and the child listens. But in dialogic reading, what happens is the adult helps the child to become the storyteller. So the adult is the listener, is the audience, and is the questioner for the child. And this really gets children doing active reading, gets them actively engaged, and helps them start to develop their reading comprehension skills and their questioning skills, even from a very, very early age. So there are some different types of prompts that adults can do when they are reading with children, things like completion prompts. So I took the story of Little Red Riding Hood. She walks through the forest, she meets to visit her grandmother, she meets the big bad wolf. He runs to her grandmother's house, eats her grandmother, and then dresses up like his grandmother in order to eat Little Red Riding Hood. She's saved at the end, so it has a happy ending. But you can do completion prompts where, especially if there's things that rhyme or if there's repetition, where Little Red Riding Hood says, "Grandmother, what big ears you have. All the better to you with my dear." And then the children supply the missing word. You can do recall prompts. What happened when Little Red Riding Hood was walking in the forest? Who did she meet? You can do open-ended prompts by just looking at pictures and talking about what they see in pictures. Children can make prediction. This is a great way for children to engage in prediction skills. WH prompts. So this can help build vocabulary, but what's the name of this? What would you call this? Are there any other words for it? And then you can also do distancing prompts to help students connect the narrative to their own lives. Remember when we visited your grandma and grandpa? What food did we bring them? So these are all questions that parents can be engaging in when they are reading aloud with children to do that dialogic reading and get the children more engaged in telling the story and get them more interested in the story. Because when children like to read and think reading is fun, they're going to be a lot more likely to engage in it on their own. Another thing you can do, that parents can do and teachers can explicitly teach, is how to do phonological awareness tasks. So things like phoneme categorization, which word does not belong, pointy, basket, path. Basket doesn't belong. It begins with a different first sound. Phoneme deletion. What's the word red without the er? It becomes ed. Do these 2 words rhyme? Red and bed. Yes. Nose and nice. No. Phoneme blending. What is the word h, e, l, e? H, e, l, e. Healthy. And then we can do the opposite, which is phoneme segmentation. How many sounds are in forest? Students can count the individual sounds. Where's the R sound? Is it the beginning, the middle, and the end? So all of these tasks are ones that parents can be doing. They don't even need a text in front of them. They can just be kind of playing games and doing these word games. And these activities really help make stronger readers because they help them be able to look for patterns, be able to use word families with spelling, be able to be stronger at sounding new words out and then blending the sounds together, and make them much stronger spellers when they can hear where individual sounds and words fall. And parents don't have to be extremely strong spellers themselves to be able to do these activities. And remember, these are things that can be sent out in those text messages. And last thing I wanted to talk about for family engagement is just some ideas about how schools can support parents with limited literacy at home. So some explicit ideas for that, since we know not all parents are going to be strong readers themselves, and they might have children in the home who are learning to read. So one thing that schools and teachers can do is really promote the value of school and literacy. Get buy-in from the families. How is this going to help the children? How is it going to help the families in general? Really encourage families and parents and guardians to be telling traditional stories, but also telling stories about their family. Again, when children are interested in stories and like to hear stories, that drives interest and engagement in reading. You can provide books for the home, including wordless picture books. Parents can look at the pictures with their children, have their children describe what they see. They can make up a story around the pictures. They're really developing important emergent reading skills when they're doing activities with those types of books. And then really important, just like we talked about in the previous slides, teachers and schools can model those behaviors, those types of questions that they can ask, and activities that parents can do with their children. So you've probably heard the story I've shared about my colleague who would read as a child, read to her grandmother and credits her grandmother for helping her read, and found out when she was an adult that her grandmother was actually illiterate. But her grandmother had learned behavior. She knew it was important for children to read out loud, and so she had her read to her every day. She knew what type of questions she could ask. When my colleague got stuck, she would be asking her questions. Well, what's the first sound? Can you sound it out? Um, let's look at the words around it. What do you think? What do you think it is? We still can't get it. All right, let's write. You can write that down, and then you can ask your mom later. So parents, even with limited literacy skills, with some coaching and with some modeling, can have very valuable tools that they can do to help their children learn to read. Just sitting and listening to them read and being engaged and supportive is going to be helpful. And then one of the things you might want to be thinking about doing as teachers at your school, are there resources that you can connect parents with limited literacy skills through the school or through the community? Are there people in the community who would be able to come over and answer questions from a distance for children who have some specific school-specific questions? Are there places where children could swap books or share books? How can you make that happen? All right, so I'm going to wrap up this section on family engagement. And I'm going to shift to talking about learning outside of school lessons. So previous section before, lots of things that parents can do to help students when they are doing their lessons. But now I want to talk about all of that learning that is going to have to be happening when students aren't sitting down with the self-learning modules or aren't on their computer. And I just love this quote, that the reality is that learning is a really big idea and it happens everywhere. And right now, more than ever, it's important that teachers and families are recognizing that and are actively encouraging children to be engaging in play and engaging in activities outside of the lessons that are going to help them learn. So these are some great infographics from Valentina Gonzalez, and she gave me permission to use them, that I really loved for suggestions that children can be using, and children of all ages can be doing to do distance learning at home and practice reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So with music, listing songs that make you feel different things, comparing songs, writing a recommendation for a song that they could be then sharing with their friends, talking about songs, drawing a picture, doing karaoke. All of these are ways that students can be outside of their lessons, but still developing their reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills. She also had some suggestions for distance learning activities with the television. If captions are available, it doesn't matter what language, but the learner's native language or English, turning the captions on is going to provide a lot of opportunities for students to practice reading, listing characters or writing a summary, writing a recommendation, drawing pictures, comparing characters, or like Dr. Brody's been talking about, having conversations, talking about their show with a family member, with a pet, with a toy, with a stuffed animal. And then things that children can do outside, just going outside and reading, sitting by the house, drawing and labeling a picture of what's around you, list things that you see, hear, and smell, writing a poem, comparing things that they see outside, making a graph about the weather. This one I really like, playing the hopscotch game, writing with chalk for sight words, numbers, letters, etc., and playing some games, reporting back what you observe. But there are so many ways that children can be learning, engaging in active learning while they are playing and while they are doing things at home. So these are just some of the ideas that we have. And there was another resource that I wanted to highlight for this. There are some open source resources that are available for that teachers or families can download. There's resources, there's e-resources, there's an activity bank for families who have children with disabilities. Just a ton of resources at this link. This is from Education Above All. But what I want to highlight is these activity packets for ages 4 to 7, 8 to 10, 11 to 14 that are made to be done without the internet. So can be downloaded and are ways for students to be engaging without needing access to the internet. So teachers could be downloading them and then sharing them with families, or might have some great ideas that teachers want to use in their own lessons. So this is an example of what that youngest group, that 4 to 7 group, what a few pages from one of those packets look like. This is leading children through exploring their imaginations and thinking about things in a different way, where they are going to draw a picture and then they rethink what everything looks like and draw another picture, also prompting them to have conversations, to be doing some labeling, but lots of really good concrete activities, and everything in this is designed to be done offline. All right, so wrapping this section up, I wanted to go back into the chat and hear what ideas you have. What are some other ways that students can learn at home outside of class time? So give you a moment, type your ideas in the chat, other things that students can be engaging in that is going to help them learn. And then Dr. Brody will read some of those responses out loud.
Well, we have making short videos by teachers. That's a great idea. Online reading, watching new programs. Let's see. Need to go down here. They're coming in so fast. Encourage students to read to siblings. Children love stories. Um, People ask if they can include watching activities in it, and I think we all of our panelists would say yes. Watching TV, educational games, riddles, short stories, playing games comes up a lot. Playing puzzles, creating their own vlogs and blogs, TV-based instruction, arranging toys based on color. That's cute. making doodles, sketches, educational movies, charades, playing I Spy, reading magazines,
Oh,
allowing learners
great.
to draw the environment and share,
Hmm.
exploring do it yourself for children. Um, Lots of ideas, lots of creativity going on, writing captions for a movie, educational podcast. Doing household chores is a great idea, and that can be connected to science activities or science reflections. Doing
Oh,
experiments,
excellent. Hmm.
um, that's pretty much, all of it. Do you want to go back to the?
Yep. Thank you so much, Crystal. So I'm sure there were other ideas that came in because those chats come in so fast. So I'll keep us going, but feel free to go back and check out all of those ideas. But reminding teachers, and this is important to remind families, that yes, the learning is so essential and having students do the lessons, but there is a lot of other ways that children can be learning right now, and highlighting that and lifting that up. So the last topic we're going to talk about is how we can maintain learner interest and motivation. So when we're thinking about engagement and thinking about motivation, emphasizing that effective, the student well-being, engagement, and autonomy as you work with them in remote teaching and learning. All of those things are connected and are important. So let's look at some concrete ideas. So when we want to encourage learners to be independent, to be self-motivated and to be driven, one thing we can do is make sure that we are a lead learner as much as we are the lead teacher, as much as we are the teacher. So model engagement. Don't just tell students how you want them to interact, show them by doing it yourself. Um, People are more engaged and motivated when they feel like they have a voice and when they have a say in things. So think about sending surveys and questions out to your students to get learner input and suggestions, and then actually apply them, put them into practice, and tell learners how you are using those ideas. Also think about how you can encourage learners to take ownership of their own learning while providing some space for choices for them. For example, you might provide a blank daily and weekly schedule, can be a really valuable tool. And then some models for routines that learners can adapt, but let them figure it out themselves with their obligations at home, with their family, what's going to work the best for them. For example, I am not a I'm not a morning person. As much as I want to be, I've learned that I do my best work in the evenings. So when I'm writing out schedules for myself, if I have something really tough and that is going to take long, deep work, I schedule that for doing in the evening because that's when it's the easiest for me to really focus. So that might be things that students know about themselves, and they can, when they have some control over their schedule, they can tap into that. So that internal motivation is really important, but also we need extrinsic motivation. So think about ways that you can reward students and that you can celebrate success. So if you are using an online platform, there's lots and lots of free apps and free resources out there that you can use. There are things like digital stickers from Google Classroom, where you can put stickers on students' work, or virtual reward systems where you can be tracking participation. Um, and people can log in and then see how many points they have. This can be very motivating for students. And reminding people about the resource that Erin pointed out, teacherspayteachers.com, tons of free stuff on there that you can download. You can just type in what you want, search for it, and then look for the free items. There's lots of stuff in there. Another thing you could do if you are going low tech or no tech, you can create remote learning rewards cards to track and encourage success. So students and teachers can be, each have one on their end and be completing it together. After students do everything that they've been asked for a week or for a few weeks, for a month, then there is a reward that they get. And it doesn't have to be something big. It could be, dropping a little prize off at their home, printing off a certificate, giving them a certificate showing that they completed it. I think on this example, you get a personal letter from the teacher. Maybe it's a home visit. Maybe it's a phone call to the parents saying, I want to tell you what a good job your child is doing. They completed all of this work and that I've been tracking. So think about ways that you can be creating remote reward cards. Make sure that students know exactly what the rewards are and how to get them, and then track them consistently. But this can really help motivate students, and it's fun to be celebrated and fun to be recognized when you do hard work. Some instructional strategies that we can use for keeping students engaged and motivated. A big one is just giving detailed praise. Those blanket good job can start to ring very hollow very quickly for children and for adults as well. So rather than saying kind of the blanket, oh, you did a really good job, nice work. Think about telling students exactly what you like about their work. In this essay, I really like all of the descriptive adjectives that you use. That was excellent. Your use of details in this picture that you drew, I really like all the different details. I appreciated how creative you were and how much time I could see that you put into drawing this comic strip or making this poster. But tell students exactly what you like about the work. And then also think about praising effort instead of praising ability. In that, ability, like whether or not someone is smart, isn't something that people have control over. So if we're telling people, oh, your children, you're so smart, you're very good at this, that can actually make them, teacher thinks I'm smart, and if I do something wrong, she's going to think, or he's going to think I'm not smart, so therefore I can never do anything wrong. It's hard to control that. But if we are saying things like praising effort, you worked really hard, I'm impressed with the amount of time that you put in this, you know what, this really improved, I could tell that you dug in and you did your reading. Effort is something that students can control. So think about giving detailed praise and then trying to praise effort instead of praising ability or intelligence. Do figure out a concrete system for monitoring progress. There's nothing more demotivating than feeling like you're just doing busy sheets or busy work and no one's actually tracking whether or not you get done. So create a checklist for the self-learning modules that as students do their work for the week, they get a chance to check it out, check it off on the checklist. And then the teacher has a checklist as well. And maybe there's weekly calls or bi-weekly calls where you're making sure you both are on the same page with the checklist. Also think about discussing long-term goals to help increase motivation. So things like helping students visualize success. So, talking to the students, imagine the end of the school year or your graduation. What will it feel like? What is it going to look like when you have all of your work for the year completed? How will you feel? Or just having conversations about how they're doing, how they're feeling, maybe encouraging them to draw a picture if they're younger for how it feels. You can also talk to students about what do you want to do when you grow up? What is it going to take to reach your goal? How is school going to help you reach their goal? What subjects from school are you going to use in that career? That can be really boost some of that intrinsic motivation. And then also think about asking a variety of questions. Don't just ask yes, no questions or WH questions. Ask a wide variety of questions. So can you have students be doing, fill in the blank, true or false, giving examples from their own life, doing short answer, more open-ended versus closed-ended. Get creative. Think about a lot of different ways that you can ask students questions. When you ask different questions about the same thing, it really lets you know whether or not learners understand it. Also, when you're asking a variety of questions, it keeps students from disengaging and keeps them interested. So think about what are the different types of questions that you can be asking students, and ask a variety. So student engagement is the product of motivation and active learning. It's a product rather than a sum because it will not occur if either element is missing. So we need to make sure that we are using all those strategies that I just talked about to keep students motivated. Also want to make sure that you are using active learning techniques and active learning um, activities and being very deliberate about what you choose, because that is what is going to maintain student engagement. And both of them are equally important. So some more recommendations for keeping that motivation as well as active ideas. Things that you could do is you can publish and share learner work. It is incredibly motivating to have an audience. People, when you're just writing something down just for yourself versus writing something down that's going to be shared. So could you be collecting articles and collecting stories that the students are writing and sending out a class newsletter every few weeks that has examples of people sharing about their lives, writing articles about topics, or maybe highlights from work that they've submitted. That is a great way to get an audience for the children. Another thing you could do is create a surreal story where learners are writing different sections or deciding what will happen next. So the teacher sets the scene, starts a story, and then it gets handed off to one child in the class over Facebook or through paper-based, and they write the next section, a paragraph, and then it gets handed to the next person. So you can do that surreal story. Or if the teacher wants to do the writing, the teacher can have the children chiming in with what they want to see happen next. And that is really, really engaging to see your ideas be put down in print. Other things that you can do for publish and sharing learner work, if you are making infographics, if you're making educational posters, are there places where they can be displayed around the village or around the city? Can children be doing illustrations or be doing comics, and can those be shared with other learners? So providing and kind of facilitating that space and the opportunity for children to be sharing their work. Another really good technique for maintaining learner motivation is tapping into learner interests. So I know I saw in the chat the other week that there were some people that were using the language experience approach, or LEA. So this is where you are using and writing down the words of the student or the students, and then using that story that you write from their words that they say out loud as a class text to practice learning. And this is super engaging because everybody, when we read a story about ourselves, it grabs our attention. We're interested in ourselves, and attention really drives learning. So LEA texts are a great way to get students' attention and make them want to read. Everybody wants to read a story about themselves or about their community. So you can do things like have people share a personal story and write it down. If there's shared experience where children in a class or children in a neighborhood have had, or even things that happen every year like holidays, have them share that experience, and then the teacher writes down a story, and this could be done over Facebook, over phone calls. Doing picture stories where maybe children are submitting pictures from around their neighborhood and then are working together with a teacher to write a story about them that connects all of them together. Or maybe the teacher supplies pictures and then the children supply the narrative and the teacher writes it down. Responding to a single picture or photo, this can be something that the teacher selects or something that the students select. Or for learners who need a little extra support, doing things like sentence frames. You know, my favorite food is, and then child completes that, and then we take those sentences and turn it into a story. Or on Mondays, I always, on Tuesdays, I always. And here is just a quick example of a LEA text that I wrote back when I was in the classroom with a student, and this was a very, very beginning level student. So she told me this story with a lot of help from the other students in class. She would speak her language to the other students, her native language, and they would talk together, and then they were kind of all work. You could recognize the words in this story about her. She started to be able to recognize them in other stories. So LEA can be really a really powerful tool that you can use. And then I also wanted to highlight Common Lit and the idea of using supplemental text. So this is something that both Crystal and Aaron have talked about, but tapping into learner interest by supplying other texts that students might be interested in. So for example, I looked through the third grade topics and then did a search on Common Lit, which is just a great free resource. And I found a third grade reading and a lot of different things that you could use. So if for English, it ties into the self-learning module about singular and plural use of count and non-count nouns, regular, irregular nouns. Health talks about nutrition. In the third grade, that's one of the self-learning modules. Science is talking about liquids, gases, and solids. Well, we could talk about what happens with those in space and how do you pack things in space. And then all subjects are going to be able to use reading comprehension and fluency. So just to highlight a few things from this Common Lit in particular, it's always free for teachers and students. Teachers can create classes and can have students do work online. There are paired texts, so texts that are similar to topic, videos, teacher guide, and a parent guide. If children are accessing it online, they can hear it read out loud, and there are options for translating. I know into Spanish and Tagalog were two of the ones that I saw. There's also guiding questions, assessment questions, and discussion that children can do online. But if you're offline, you can also download the PDF with all of those questions and assessment questions and use it offline as well. So I just wanted to highlight that activity. All right, so last chat, wanted to hear what is an idea, a resource, or a suggestion that you are going to try out in your teaching. So what is one of the things that we've talked about during this hour together that you would like to try out?
Language experience approach, digital stickers, that's a great one. Offline activities, serial story in recaps, pelts, stories again, dialectic reading. So there's a lot of continuity amongst the posting, serial stories. Learning outside of school, engaging parents, supplementary texts, digital stickers, again, serial stories, completing the ending of a story. We see a lot of
Great.
same ideas.
Great, thank you. I'm so glad that people have some really concrete tasks that you can take and use to encourage that motivation and engagement. Thank you, Crystal. All right, so as I wrap this up, there's just one last resource I wanted to highlight. Again, knowing that internet and access to the internet can be a really big challenge. So teachforall.org, there's going to be the link that people can click on, has a living document that is recommendations and suggestions from teachers all over the world, sharing stories, sharing strategies, sharing resources that can be used to teach when you don't have consistent and reliable access to the internet. So definitely, if you are in a place where most of your students don't have internet access, this is definitely worth spending a little time checking out. There's a ton of information in there right now. And then I wanted to leave and end my session today with one last thought. I wasn't born to just teach. I was born to inspire others, to change people, and to never give up, even when faced with challenges that seem impossible. So, thank you. Thank you to all of the teachers out there in the Philippines, around the world, who are faced with the impossible and are continuing to show up for your families and show up for your students every day. You are a hero. You are showing resilience and you are showing grace. And that is incredibly, incredibly important. And when all of this is over, your students, families of your students are going to remember that you were there for the children, that you didn't give up, and that even though things seem really impossible, you are continuing to do your best to deliver high quality instruction, and how important that is for children to have that and to know that you're there for them. So I wanted to end with just a huge thank you to all of you for the hard work that you're doing. We can do hard things, and it has been an absolute pleasure and a joy to be able for myself and the other specialists to learn with you over the past 6 weeks. So there are going to be some references. You can check those out if you want to dig into them. Reminding people we will do some Facebook follow-up. We'll have about kind of a few days left, and so I'll be posting some prompts in the Facebook that you can go ahead, respond to, and I'll be reading all those and responding back, and this is a great way for you to continue to learn from others. And now we are going to move into the Q&A portion. So reminding you, it's going to be a little different. We're only going to have about, I think, 15 minutes for the Q&A with the English language specialists. And then we are going to hand it over to our DepEd partners, who are going to be talking a little bit and answering some questions that have come up over the past few webinars, over the first webinars, about some of those logistics questions that they're going to be equipped to answer. So, going to go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if people want to go ahead and start putting some questions in the Q&A, Crystal and Aaron and I will address them. And I see there's only one question so far, so maybe Aaron or Crystal, if there's a question that came up during the topic that you want to think is important to lift up, you could go ahead and share that.
Well, one of the questions that came up repeatedly is, how should we deal with parents who are working all the time, or children who do child labor? The issue of time and also attention. My answer to that is to, especially for children in child labor or children who are too busy to pay attention to school, is to find a way to make whatever you present to them as school as a very safe place where they can be a child, where they don't have to be the worker and to carry so much responsibility, where they can feel like themselves. It makes school just basically a place where they want to be, in contrast to their other life. So by giving them fun activities, child developmentally appropriate activities, so they can be what they are, children, you know. So that's my best answer to you. Thank you.
Well, I saw there was one about digital badges. It disappeared, but I can maybe talk a little bit about that. So typically the way that digital badges work is that when you know you participate in a webinar or some other perhaps a series of webinars event, so the issuer has to use a specific platform, and then you have a sort of digital badge portfolio or wallet where you store all of these digital badges. And so as a teacher, I know that that Andrea in her presentation mentioned Google Classroom, and I'm not familiar with their digital badging system, but there are other platforms where you as the teacher can set up your own sort of classroom digital badging system. The one that I'm familiar with is openbadges.me. So that's OP, so open, OPEN, and then badges, BADGES.ME. This is a freemium model, but I know that the free version here allows you, I think, that you can share badges with up to 50 people, and you can create an unlimited number of badges. So this basically allows you to set up your own system, your own badging system. So you can set up a series of badges for different things that students do, completing different assignments or different projects, different tasks. And then you can issue these to your students, and they can collect them. They'll sign up, or they need to sign up as well, and then they sort of store them in their badge portfolio. And it's kind of a great reward system that you could set up in your classroom, which is especially appropriate for this distance learning situation. So that's the one I'm familiar with. There are definitely others out there. And I don't know if Andrea wanted to talk a little bit about the Google Classroom one. I'm not too familiar with that, but that's the one that I know. So I'll pass it to Andrea.
All right, thank you, Aaron. And I did, there was a question that somebody had about school catering, Cheryl talking about school catering to children with special needs. And I see that Dr. Brody responded to that. And I also did want to lift up I'm not going to be able to remember the exact name of the resource, but one of the resource that I shared with the modules that can be downloaded and used for parents at home does have an area specifically for special needs children, with activities that families can be doing with children at home, or teachers could be guiding families to do with children at home, that are specific for children with special needs. So definitely check out that activity that came in that section of learning outside of the classroom. So I just wanted to point that out. So there was also a question from Amy. Developing the comprehension skills of students is difficult because of the new normal. Any strategy that you can share? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. When we can't just ask students a question in person, it takes a lot more effort to get comprehension and really see, do children understand? So this is where I would encourage asking different questions. So whether you are or sending the questions out through text message, asking different types of questions, where making sure that children have lots of opportunities to be demonstrating what they know. So not just answering WH or yes, no questions, but actually demonstrating what they know through giving an example, sharing how they would use this in real life, finding an example of this language in a newspaper or in writing around their house, trying to, don't just ask one question, ask 10 different questions. That's going to give you a much better sense of whether or not they actually understand. And think about tapping into some of those great writing activity ideas and using those critical thinking skills and getting students to demonstrate their knowledge through creating a product instead of just quickly answering a yes, no, or some comprehension questions. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Crystal.
Yeah, and I see that we're already almost at 7:15, so I try to be mindful of the time. I'm always interested in psychological questions. Here's one: apart from extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation is highly valuable as well. How can we get students to be intrinsically motivated? I would like to refer to my discussion on metacognitive strategies. If you want your students to be intrinsically motivated, maybe you just ask them, what makes you motivated? What makes you want to do some things? And let them reflect on it and see how you can build on this with your students in the activities that you provide for them. I always find it highly valuable to ask students how something works for them. And I'm always amazed about the depth of the answers that come across. So that's my tip for you. Aaron, or Andrea and Aaron, do we have time for another question, or
We
do
have
we take it over?
We still have time because we're going till 6:20 with questions.
Great.
Yeah,
Great,
so we
great.
still have some more time.
Perfect. Aaron?
Yeah, so there was one, or I think there have been several questions I've seen, both during and the presentation and now after, about parents who are not able to help their children, perhaps because they don't have time or because of lack of schooling. This particular one from an anonymous attendee is asking about those parents who just don't have a lot of schooling and just aren't able to help their child with the content. And I would say that, one way it would be perhaps to encourage the parent to rely on the other modalities that DepEd is developing, like TV-based instruction and radio-based instruction. Remember, when we looked at the sort of anatomy of those broadcasts, that they do include direct instruction, so really encouraging the parent to see what they can do and not what they can't do. So, that maybe they can provide that, they can get the direct instruction, the actual explanations of the new content from the radio broadcast and the TV broadcast, so they can sit beside their child while they're listening or watching those broadcasts, and then seeing which of the can they, after watching those broadcasts or listening to those broadcasts with their children, can they help them with some of the self-learning module activities, right? They're also listening and getting that direct instruction from the broadcast, so they're learning along with their child. Can they sit down and then help them and guide them in those self-learning module activities? So really, encouraging them to really look for solutions and see what they can do, in that process. And I'm sure that there are things they can do. And again, they have those resources, the radio and TV resources, as well as the self-learning modules. And remember, from the paper-based instruction webinar, the self-learning modules do include some direct instruction as well. So they might be able to lean on that as well. So just, encouraging them to try to sort of carve out a role for themselves based on, their background. So with that, I'll pass it to Andrea.
Great. So we have about 4 more minutes left. So I think we have enough time for all of us to answer some more questions. So one of the questions came in, parents are very eager to get modules because of the school feeding program, suggestions to help them be more motivated, and not just because of the feeding program. I don't see any problem with this. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Children need to eat. You can't learn if you're hungry. And so if that is one of the ways that you can get people to come and pick up the self-learning modules, I actually think that's a fantastic role for the school to be helping students get the nutrition they need to be able to learn. And then, are there ways for tying into some of those interesting and engaging activities that students can do once they get the learning modules? You can't do any activities unless the children have it in their hands. So any way that you can get parents and families to come and pick them up and also, help meet some of their needs, I think is absolutely excellent. And I love that your school is combining that. And then I saw a question kind of similar about how can I help my student, from Hilda. How can I help my student whose mother tells me she cannot help her guide her 3rd grade daughter because she doesn't know how? She's just grade 6 graduate. So she's thinking she wants her daughter to stop schooling. So this is where those lines of communication and being really clear with parents how teachers are going to be able to continue to support students and continue to support learning is going to be really important, so that parents don't feel like they have to do it alone and that their expectation is to do it by themselves. If you can model some of those different activities like the dialogic reading, concrete questions, highlight to the mother how much she does know and how much the stories that she's telling the child and helping the child become more responsible, how that is all going to help her education and schooling. but I think really highlighting for the mother the importance of schooling, but also letting her know that it is not expected for her to be the teacher, because it sounds like there's just a lot, the mother feels like there's a lot of pressure on her, but letting her know what supports are in place. And then there was a question about evaluating reading comprehension. So I'm just going to do a quick mention. Text-dependent questions are a really good way to see if students actually understand what they're reading. And I will share on the Facebook page some text-dependent question stems and frames that you can use to write text-dependent questions to really see if students are comprehending what they read. All right, I'm going to turn it over. I think we have a time for a quick one from Crystal and one last quick one from Erin.
Yeah, so there were several questions, including from Clarissa, about how to teach students with special needs. In her case, this emotional disturbed learners. So if you teachers already know how to teach your students, such students in your classroom, you need to find a way to transfer your knowledge about what these students need to the online space, because you already know your special education strategies and you know which students are in need of what. So don't be shy to don't question your ability to teach them, because you already know how to do that, and transfer it online. And again, asking the student what makes them more disturbed in the lesson and what makes them less disturbed. Maybe you can find a way of tapping into their knowledge about themselves to what sets them off, and provide instruction accordingly. So that's my feedback. Aaron, do you want to take it up?
Yeah, so I've been answering a couple here. I've been typing some answers, but there was one here from Charicel, I think. So she said, in light of dialogic reading, can we use this dialogic strategy in the actual teaching of English in the lessons? And I would say absolutely, and she specifically asks in the context of distance learning. So, it is possible. It's a little bit more challenging, but, I think that in the example, something like nowcomment.com, where you can, Andrea, am I breaking up at all?
You're breaking up a little bit, but you keep coming back. Oh, and now you're frozen. Oh, shoot. All right, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up the EL Specialist question and answer section, and we're going to hand it over to our DepEd partners to go ahead and share the answers to questions that they've come up with. And then I think we can keep typing in some responses in the chat box. Right.
Thank you, Ms. Andrea, Ms. Christelle, and Sir Aaron. That was another insightful session on motivating and engaging learners while on remote learning. So as one student puts it, online school is just like in-person school, but with all the fun bits removed. Without the ambient social interactions that are such a rich part of a regular school, or a regular day at school, and without in-person guidance from teachers, many of the key motivational drivers were suddenly gone. So the challenge really is on us teachers. But before we ask how we can motivate and engage students in remote learning, we have to make sure that as teachers, we model that level of enthusiasm and motivation. I'm saying this because students are quickly influenced by that level of engagement that a teacher displays in the classroom. And students can see that, they can feel that even in the virtual classroom. So based on the session of Andrea, it was apparent that motivating students with carrots and sticks is not getting us the deep learning and love of learning we desire. So thanks to Ms. Andrea for providing us a number of meaningful strategies and techniques. that can help us sustain the engagement of learners, including their families, who by this time should really have a stake in the learning of their children. And so we in the Department of Education have consolidated some of the questions of our participants during the past webinar sessions, and we took note of those frequently arising ones. One of which is this: with the number of activities provided in the SLMs, would it be okay for the teachers to just choose specific activities for the learners to answer? So as you understand, the self-learning module is the primary learning resource that we use for distance learning. You probably notice a series of various assessments that we have included in the SLMs. However, we don't see any problem if you reduce these assessments or change it with what you deem as the most appropriate for your learners. We trust that you as teachers are the persons who can best assess and evaluate the capability of the learners. You know it if the assessments are already sufficient based on the learner's progress. We also know that on your end, you also have developed learning activity sheets and other supplementary materials that can enrich learning. So please use them if you think that they are more applicable based on the context of your learners. But remember also that when you reduce or change some of the tasks in the SLMs, you have to be sure that you do not sacrifice the attainment of the most essential learning competencies. It's like having your learners walk through different pathways, but you make sure that they are all going towards one destination, and that is the attainment of the most essential learning competency. So that's it for my answer to that question. Our chief in the Teaching and Learning Division, Dr. Villanesa, might want to add to that. Ma'am Rose?
I agree with you, Ma'am Rosalie, that our teachers know what is best for their learners, and that we don't limit, like even if we provided you with the SLMs, but it's not an end in itself. You can modify it, but the point is that we have to comply with the requirements that they will be able to develop the skills in the melt. So you are we that module, and even the Department of Education curriculum stated it, that like we are going in the same direction, but we can travel differently. So I think that's do it differently according to the needs and the ability of our students, which you know better than those who wrote the SLMs. Thank you.
Sir Dan?
All right, thank you so much, Ma'am Rosalie and Ma'am Rose. So here is another question. What's the prescribed number of hours in an online instruction for learners in the different grade levels? Fellow educators, please bear in mind that as per DepEd memo, DMCI 2020-00162, otherwise known as Suggested Strategies in Implementing Distance Learning Delivery Modalities for school year 2020-2021, schools may adopt a combination of synchronous and asynchronous online teaching in consideration of the screen time guidelines by age as recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics, or AAP, and World Health Organization, which are as follows. So for kindergarten, maximum of 1 hour daily. For grades 1 to 5, maximum of 5 hours daily. For grades 6 to 8, maximum of 2 hours daily. And for grades 9 to 12, a maximum of 4 hours daily. 2 hours in the morning and another 2 hours in the afternoon is recommended. So in the preparation of the weekly home learning plan and class programs, schools shall comply with the recommended screen time for learners. So fellow educators, fellow teachers, especially those who are teaching in the same grade level, when you prepare your weekly home learning plan, you should coordinate with each other on scheduling your online activities or classes, taking into account the screen time guidelines provided. We should bear in mind nowadays, at this time, that collaboration is the trick of the game, right? So that would be all. Let me pass it on my colleague, Ma'am Anna, for another frequently asked question.
Thank you, Sir Dan. So we also have another common question the teachers have been asking. It's about other resources or ways we can teach aside from using the SLM. So the question goes like this. These learners are mostly from our poor families who don't have these resources or have less access to digital resources. How do we address these problems? Can you suggest ways except for the use of SLM? So again, DepEd offers several modalities. You can read this in the DepEd memo, suggested strategies. You can enrich your lesson by your SLM by combining it with other modalities. So you have your blended learning and providing additional resources like the power worksheets, which was discussed to us. So actually, this have been answered and discussed during the webinar, but we just want to reiterate that we also have television and radio-based instruction that will help learners to understand the lessons in the modules. Why? Because the TV and radio-based lessons are anchored on the MEL and the SLM as well. And so there is congruence between the paper-based instruction and broadcast-based learning. So with the help of your weekly home learning plan, you as a teacher, you shall indicate the broadcast schedule of the TV and radio stations where the TV and radio lessons will be aired. And then it was also raised that some families have limited access to digital resources. So remember, the modality that you are using right now is the result of the needs assessment and consultation with the stakeholders. So it only shows the most feasible learning delivery modality considering your school infrastructure, capacity of the teachers, and the resources of the family. So if you are doing modular-based instruction, it only means this is the one applicable for the learning community. Now, you can supplement your activities in the SLM, just like what you heard from Ma'am Rosalie. Okay, so you can reduce, you can enrich by indicating and explaining it to the weekly home learning plan. Our specialists have shared a lot of resources, both for online and offline. You just have to ensure that you provide clear instructions and expectations on what your learners need to do, so they'll be guided accordingly. Okay, so I think we still have another question. This time, Ma'am Rosalie will clarify to us.
Thank you, Miss Anna. So here's another question. How can we assess student learning if there would be no periodical test? Okay, so as you know, the department released DepEd Order 31, Series of 2020, or the interim guidelines for assessment and grading in light of the basic education learning continuity plan. And yes, it is stated there that there would no longer be quarterly assessment. But please note that to evaluate student learning at particular points in each quarter, summative assessments will continue in the form of written works and performance tasks. If you remember, quarterly assessments were given a weight of 20% in DepEd Order number 8, Series of 2015, or the policy guidelines on classroom assessment for the K-12 basic education. Now, since it will no longer be part of the grading system for this school year, its previously determined weight was distributed equally in written works and performance tasks, where we have allotted an additional 10% to each component. Written works will be administered to assess knowledge and understanding through quizzes and long or unit tests, while performance tasks, on the other hand, allow learners to show what they know and are able to do in diverse ways. They may create or innovate products or do performance-based tasks, including skill demonstrations, group presentations, oral work, multimedia presentations, and research projects. Please note also that written outputs may be considered as performance tasks. DO31 also provides a list of sample summative assessments that fall under performance tasks. There are sample grade computation also there, given the new grading system. So please refer to DO31 series of 2020. Also, please note that we're still going to use the transmutation table, which is an appendix in DO8 series of 2015, including the guidelines on learners' progress report, as well as on promotion and retention. Okay, so that's it. I'll now give you back to Sir Den.
Right, thank you again, Ma'am Rosalie. So here is my question. How can we ensure that home facilitators are able to teach learners to be engaged in SLMs and make learning possible and successful? You know, fellow educators, teaching is a shared responsibility among home, school, and community. Parental authority encompasses the right and obligation of the parent to provide for the psychological and educational needs of the children. Proper planning, careful scheduling, and an open communication with their children are huge factors which will help parents in fulfilling this duty. Parents need not to teach their children all the time, thereby sacrificing their work for the needs of the family. They will be provided a home weekly learning plan from the class advisor that can help them manage time and monitor their children. The weekly home learning plan ensures that learners are on task and are guided by their parents or guardians on what they are expected to accomplish within a specific week. Parents may also opt to ask help from our older children and relatives to supervise the learning. For more specific details on weekly home learning plan, I encourage you, fellow teachers, to look at DepEd Memo DMCI 2020-00162. Okay, so all right, back to you, Ma'am Anna.
Sir Den, wait. Chief Rose might want to add more on that because I know that the roles and responsibilities of parents, that's really her expertise.
All right.
Chief Rose, would you like to add more to that, ma'am?
No, I just came from a monitoring, and I'm really glad, and I saw what is really happening in the field. And now more than ever, parents were telling me when I went to Region 3 and I went to Region 9, were telling me that, like, they acknowledge the work of the teachers, and that they now realize how difficult it is to teach. And and so and and so they really appreciate the work of the teachers. And as parents, they've realized that they really need to sit with their kids, to guide their learners to do the task. And it's funny because and funny and interesting that the teachers really created a group chat, not only for with the students, but with the parents. And the parents ask questions to the teachers if they don't understand what's in the module. So parents and teachers are very creative, so they created a group chat. Then there's no there's no other means that the parents can communicate with the teachers, so this is the time that the teacher can do a home visit. But this is really in collaboration with the I saw a question about home visit. And like, there is a very strong partnership with the LGU. They sign a memorandum of understanding with the LGU, so the parents, the teachers will go to the home of the learners in partnership with the local government. So there's really a collaboration, and there's a need for the teachers to really communicate with the there's really a need for the parents to communicate with the teachers to be able to to ventilate or to tell what the needs of their learners are, other than the learners communicating with the teachers. Imagine there's one instance in Region 3 that the parents were texting the teacher, kulang po, there's a missing page in the module. We did not receive the module on ESP. They are communicating. So I think, like, we talk about support, we talk about guiding, we talk about communicating, we talk about appreciating. And if you recall, our experts here from US Embassy really talk about how parents can help their learners, and how motivating the learners through the parents can help in learning. So a combination of all those that we learn, and a combination of all those that the NGOs are doing in the community, and with the support of the teachers. Sabi nga nila, I was so touched. There's one teacher kasi daw, there's a buy one take one, because there's no other mean except the text. There's a buy one take one, very simple cell phone, 499 buy one take one. So she has two students na kahit cellphone wala. She bought a cell phone and gave it to the two students. Text if they do not have other means except text. And I was telling, paano if the students do not have the load? She is giving 20 pesos load. Sabi niya, it's my payback to my learners anyway. I don't go to school. I just communicate with them. You know, parents can really be very supportive, and teachers can really be supportive to their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Rose. Okay, so we also have another um, question. It's a repeated question and concern. Why are there answer keys in the module? So, you see, the answer key, this is an essential element of independent self-paced learning. So, its inclusion in the module allows learners, of course, ideally to develop metacognitive strategies so they can monitor their own learning, adopt some ways on how they can improve in the succeeding tasks, or develop their study strategies. Now, they can also retake, redo the assessment until such time that they have mastered the competency, which makes it learning effort focused, not ability focus. So for teachers, we must explain and remind our students on how to use the answer key. It's not just about orienting our learners, but we must include also the parents. So through proper communication, we can empower the parents on how they can help us in monitoring the progress of our students, of their kids. So one strategy which was already mentioned by our specialists that we just want to reiterate is that, for example, you tell the parents, maybe you can keep first the answer key, and during your free time or your quality time with your kid, you can quickly check and see if your child was able to answer it accurately. Now, if the parent sees a lot of errors, advise the parents to contact you based on your agreed communication platform, whether it's going to be text, chat, email. So you can provide some strategies and clarify misconception. And again, let's change that mindset that the answer key is not necessary. Rather, we should realize that the answer key promotes shared accountability among the teachers, students, and parents. Now, there's a question in the chat box. It says there, will the answer key be the basis of grading the students? Based on the DepEd order interim policy on assessment, you will be grading or assessing your students with written works and performance tasks. So a minimum of 4 written works and 4 performance tasks within the quarter. And obviously, a performance task, you don't see the answer key or in a performance task, or it's not just the SLM or the activities in the SLM will be the basis of grading your student. In a way, it's a sort of like formative, but your summative assessment will be a different activity or a different assessment that you can attach in the SLM. So I hope that clarifies the misconception. Maybe Mom Rose would like to add and to wrap up this frequently asked questions.
Is that the last one? Okay, so
Um, yes, Chief Rose, Ma'am Ann, I think there's still another question here on home visitation. Home
okay.
visitation,
Yes,
Chief
Chief
Rose,
Rose.
can you answer
Yeah.
that if
Yes,
teachers are required to do that? Yes, po, please.
yes, as I was stressing this morning, earlier, that you can do home visitation, especially with students that are lagging behind. You know, they have their individual plan, and you will notice that though you will notice in that individual plan the students that are lagging behind. So you can, but that is in coordination with the LGU, because like I've heard a lot of best practices, in the field, yeah, signing memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding with the local. There's even one school in that, because all the students are coming to that school using a bus, or a school bus, and take note, the school bus driver volunteered to be the deliverer of the module. It's really, and he is doing it uh house to house. He collects and he delivers. And then I think in all the schools that I went to, they have the GC, group chat for parents and group chat for students. But again, if this GC is not, like, because they were telling that not all the students are accessible with this, so they are doing a home visit. The only guide is that you have to coordinate with the LGUs, because you have to partner with them because we have these people in the field who are members of the interim interagency task force, so will be assisting you in doing that. But teachers are really allowed to do that in case they won't be able to communicate with the learners through whatever modalities that they're talking to, especially if the students are if that learner is really lagging behind. We really need to help them. Okay, then I think there will be a PIR, program implementation review, one of these months, maybe in end of November, that the TLD will be conducting, and we will be hearing best practices all over the country. We all know that this is not easy for us, and so we are happy that U.S. Embassy helped us, and I listening to all their inputs. There are lots of things that we're able to learn, which will enhance the way we deliver and enhance the way we do activity sheets that are added to the modules. But I just want you to think about the context of your learners. Let us not bombard them with lots and lots of activities. Remember that they have limitations and that they are in different contexts now. What is important is that we were able to motivate them, and that we were able to help them address their socio-emotional component, special skills, like if this is too difficult for us as a teacher, this might be extra difficult for our learners. So we want them to learn, but we want to assure that we address their mental, physical, and emotional problems, so that learning will be smooth, and that we will be able to get or to achieve our desired goals. You Is that the end of our question and answer?
Yes, Chief.
Okay, so after this we'll have and I just would like to take note of all these messages here, and I would like to thank all the participants, teacher participants. You know that you are our frontliners. Everything that we prepare in the central office will be futile if you will not do it, because you are there and you are our heroes in terms of delivering the teaching and learning, be it in whatever modalities. So just be strong, continue to do and give your best to our learners, because our learners, Filipino learners, only deserve the best. Okay, and remember that they are the reasons why we are called teachers. Thank you.
All right, so tonight's webinar is indeed full of comprehensive and informative discussion delivered to us by our EL specialist team.
Yes.
Let us give a virtual round Dr. Crystal, Andrea Ackelberger, and
Thank you. Salute.
Thank you
I
also.
salute you.
Thank you also to my colleagues in DepEd, Ma'am Rosalie Bongon, Ma'am Ana Marlene Litonwa, and Ma'am Rosalina Villanesa for joining me in presenting and wrapping up the frequently asked questions raised by our participants. A lot of helpful strategies on how to keep the students motivated, interested, focused, and engaged. Listen to the recorded video messages of John Law, charge the affairs of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, and Dr. Emily Furlis, Regional English Language Officer, to be followed by the closing remarks of our DepEd Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction, Diosdado San Antonio. Let us welcome them and give them a virtual round of applause.
Hello. and greetings from the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. It's our great pleasure to congratulate you and our partners at the Department of Education for the completion of the Bridging the Distance Together English Language Training Series. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted our lives in so many ways. We salute Philippine teachers and administrators for your unparalleled dedication, commitment, and passion, especially during this difficult time. I'm proud to say my wife is a former English teacher, so I well understand and appreciate the importance of the work that you do to enrich the lives of your students. This webinar series, the first of its kind in the world, has been even more successful than we could have hoped. More than 1,600 teachers and administrators have participated in the live Zoom sessions. The webinar has reached almost 3.2 million people on Facebook since the September 14th launch. This project is the most far-reaching U.S. Department of State English program anywhere in the world. We're honored to be part of such an amazing project. I'd especially like to thank the Department of Education through Undersecretary Jostado San Antonio for his outstanding cooperation with the U.S. Embassy. I'd also like to thank the DepEd team of Denmark Alayon, Anna Marlene de Contua, Rosalie Bongo, and Leah Galgo for your guidance and support. I also commend our 3 English language specialists, Andrea, Christelle, and Aaron, for your great work. In short order, in cooperation with our Filipino partners, you developed a course tailored to the specific needs of Filipino teachers, administrators, students, and parents. All around the world, teachers and students are facing the challenge of shifting to alternative teaching methods. Our sincere hope is that this series, along with the resource library, give you the tools and confidence to navigate this transition here in the Philippines. I encourage you to share what you've learned with your colleagues so that even more students can continue their English language learning. The success of this webinar series proves that indeed, together, the United States and the Philippines will successfully overcome any challenge that comes our way. We're more than allies, we're friends and partners. Thank you and congratulations on this important achievement.
Hello, dear educators. My name is Emily Perlis, and I'm the Director of the Regional English Language Office at the U.S. Embassy of the Philippines, based in Manila. I oversee English language programs in the Philippines, as well as Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and the Pacific Island countries. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to speak to all of you virtually tonight. Thank you so much to all of you for your enthusiasm, dedication, support, and in participation in the 6-week webinar series, Bridging the Distance, which has been a phenomenal success. The combined Facebook and Zoom reach of this project has been the single greatest ever of any U.S. Department of State English language program in history around the world, which is incredible. Thank you so much to all of you and congratulations. First, I would like to give a huge thank you to the Department of Ed for all of their support and collaboration on this project, especially Undersecretary Gustavo San Antonio, as well as Dr. Leila Arreola and Dr. Rosalina Villanesa from the Bureau of Learning Delivery, as well as Director John Shiena from the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. And I have to acknowledge the incredible work of our English language specialists, Andrea Ackelberger, Dr. Christelle Brody, and Aaron Boyer, for their great work on this project. Our team designed and facilitated a 6-week webinar series for teachers and administrators specifically to the educational standards of the Philippines and the needs and conditions on the ground during this time of COVID that required the move to virtual, online, radio, television, and paper-based instruction. Not an easy task. And a thank you to the 4-member team from DepEd's Bureau of Learning Delivery and NEA. Den Mark Alayon, Anna Marlene Litonwa, Rosalie Bongon, and Leah Galgo for providing their assistance, advice, and support to our English language specialists throughout this project. They provided incredible support, and we couldn't have done this without them. And not to forget, a thank you to the American Spaces team of the Philippines for providing their incredible technological support for this project. The collaboration amongst these multiple teams, we hope will assist in providing English language teachers with the support and professional development that they need to transition to these learning modalities during this time. And we hope that this will promote the improvement of English language teaching and proficiency throughout the Philippines and even beyond COVID-19. And we think that it will. And we think that together we can make this possible. And of course, I would like to thank the teachers and administrators for participating in this 6-week webinar series. I hope that you will use what you learned and shared within your own communities of practice, as well as utilize the resources that have been created by the English language specialist team. These include a video resource library, as well as discussion guides, discussion questions, activities, and other resources to help you as you cascade this knowledge within learning action cells or with other teachers and educators in your community. And we hope that this is just the beginning. And I would like to reassure you that the U.S. Embassy's Regional English Language Office is so excited to be a partner with the educators of the Philippines. And I encourage all of you to explore the free resources that the Regional English Language Office, or RELO Manila, offers, such as the American English Live webinar series, or the incredibly popular Massive Open Online Courses, or MOOCs, and the amazing MOOC camps that are facilitated throughout the Philippines. The facilitators of our MOOC camps are some of the most talented individuals I have ever seen in action, and they have amazing work for all of the educators that participate in these series with the free and incredibly open online resources. We hope that you will utilize these free resources for you and share these resources with your colleagues. We look forward to more collaborations together. And again, congratulations and thank you so much to all of you for your support and efforts in making this important project such a success. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Education, I wish to reiterate our sincerest gratitude to the United States Embassy for making sure that our fellow teachers here in the Philippines still get the chance to get updates through this bridging the distance together virtual and online English language instruction in the Philippines. Truly, with people which making sure that the youngsters we all I really learned on the basis of highly updated, competent, and fellow teachers in the Philippines. This have happened without ever ready support congratulations to the participants. Also, brave the challenge of still in the midst of I feel to be a part of education. One of you teachers who has been given the privilege of joining the executive committee of the Secretary of the Linguists. You have all demonstrated how it is to be a highly professional, highly education, basic education, even during most trying times. There are only a few people who would wish to see us fail, but I feel so reassured that many, many Filipinos and many world citizens, like the United States Embassy, would want to help us succeed the Bayanihan way. Thank you, everyone, once again. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. And God bless.
All right, so we would like to sincerely thank our dear participants for being with us all through this 6-week webinar series, to our partners from the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, Regional English Language Office, and American Spaces, and of course to our EL specialists for collaborating with us to make this project a reality and at the same time a success. Truly it is that nothing is impossible if we collaborate and learn from each other for the common good of the people we serve amid the challenges and uncertainties. As Steve Jobs once said, great things are not done by one person. They are done by a team of people. Congratulations and thank you. To our participants, we hope that the 6-week webinar series has guided you to learn, unlearn, and relearn significant key concepts and strategies that will prepare you to transition to various alternative online and offline lesson delivery options and ultimately embrace and adapt to the changes in the educational landscape. So that ends our 6-week webinar session. Thank you everyone and God bless us all.